Hello everyone. Please like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our stories.
In the heart of the 100-acre wood, where the trees swayed gently and the sun peeked through the leaves, Winnie the Pooh sat on a wooden log just outside his cozy home. The morning was quiet, except for the soft rustling of the wind and the distant chirping of birds. Pooh, with his round belly and gentle smile, was deep in thought, or as deep as a bear with a rumbly tummy could be. He scratched his head, feeling the familiar pang of hunger, and wondered what he might have for breakfast. As he pondered, a faint buzzing sound drifted through the air. Pooh's ears perked up, and his eyes widened with hope. He knew that sound well. It was the sound of bees, and where there were bees, there was sure to be honey. And honey, as everyone in the 100-acre wood knew, was Pooh's very favorite thing in the whole wide world. If a bee buzzes, there must be honey nearby, Pooh mused aloud, his voice soft and thoughtful. Bees make honey, and honey is my favorite thing. Without another moment's hesitation, Pooh followed the gentle hum, his nose twitching and his feet padding softly over the mossy ground. The buzzing led him to a splendid old tree, tall and sturdy, with a beehive dangling from a branch high above. Golden drops of honey glistened at the hive's edge, catching the sunlight and making Pooh's mouth water. He gazed up, pondering the challenge before him. If I climb up there, I might be able to get some honey for breakfast, he reasoned, his eyes fixed on the hive. With determination, Pooh began to climb, his paws gripping the bark, his eyes never leaving the promise of honey above. With each step, Pooh muttered encouragement to himself. This honey must be delicious. If only the bees would let me taste a little. The climb was hard work for a bear of Pooh's shape, but he pressed on, dreaming of sweet honey melting on his tongue. Suddenly, a branch beneath his foot gave way with a sharp crack. Before Pooh knew it, he tumbled down, bouncing from branch to branch, and landed with a soft thud on the grass below. He sat for a moment, dazed, the world spinning gently around him. When the stars stopped twinkling before his eyes, Pooh got to his feet, dusted himself off, and nodded thoughtfully. I need a smarter plan, he decided, for Pooh was a bear of very little brain, but he was always willing to think of another way. He set off to find his best friend, Christopher Robin, who was always full of clever ideas. Christopher Robin lived nearby, and he greeted Pooh with a bright smile as he approached. Christopher Robin, Pooh began, I need a balloon. I think if I float up like a cloud, the bees won't suspect anything. Christopher Robin chuckled at the idea. Pooh, what would you do if the bees suspected you were a bear? Pooh considered this very seriously. I would sing a song about clouds and hope the bees would be fooled, he replied, as if this were the most sensible thing in the world. Christopher Robin found a big blue balloon and handed it to Pooh. Together, they tied the string around Pooh's middle, and Pooh gripped it tightly. As the balloon lifted him gently off the ground, Pooh floated upward, higher and higher, until he was level with the beehive. Up in the sky, Pooh began to sing softly. I am just a little cloud, just a cloud passing by. He hoped the bees would believe him, but as he drew closer, the bees poured out of the hive, buzzing curiously around this strange, floating cloud. One bee landed on Pooh's nose, making him sneeze. Another settled on his ear, tickling him until he giggled. The bees didn't seem convinced that Pooh was a cloud at all. Christopher Robin, Pooh called down, trying to keep his voice steady. I think maybe these are not good honeybees. Maybe they are bad honeybees. Christopher Robin, who had been watching from below with a mixture of amusement and concern, called back, Do you want to come down, Pooh? Pooh thought for a moment. Not really, but, well, if I can, I might as well get down. So Christopher Robin carefully pulled on the rope, lowering Pooh back to the ground. When Pooh finally landed, he was a sight to behold, covered in pollen, his fur ruffled, and his nose twitching from all the sneezing. But despite all his efforts, he hadn't managed to get even a single drop of honey. Pooh sat down, a little out of breath, but still hopeful. I guess I'll have to think of another way to get honey, he sighed. But that was the thing about Pooh. No matter how many times he tumbled or how many bees buzzed around him, he never gave up on his search for honey. And as he sat beneath the tree, thinking of clouds and balloons and clever plans, he knew that someday, somehow, he would find a way to taste that sweet golden treat. For in the 100-acre wood, every day was a new adventure, and every adventure was sweeter with friends by your side, and perhaps just a little bit of honey. It was a blustery morning in the 100-acre wood, the kind of morning when the sky is hidden behind thick, gray clouds, and the trees seem to whisper secrets to one another as they sway. The wind was everywhere, rushing through the branches, whistling through the hollows, and making the leaves on the ground chase each other in dizzying circles. It was the sort of day when even the most contented bear might feel a little unsettled, and so it was with Winnie the Pooh. Pooh sat in his cozy house under the tree, a jar of honey in front of him and a spoon in his paw. Each time the wind howled, his house gave a little shudder, as if trying to shake off the bluster outside. Pooh, never one to be hurried by the weather, took another thoughtful mouthful of honey and pondered the situation. "It seems to me," he mused, "that today is a very windy day indeed. Perhaps the sort of day when a bear should check on his friends." With that, Pooh finished his breakfast and fetched the woolen cap that Christopher Robin had knitted for him last winter. He pulled it down over his ears, buttoned his coat, and stepped bravely outside. The wind greeted him with a playful tug, nearly toppling him over. Pooh held onto his hat and set off through the wood, the wind swirling around him, pushing and pulling at his every step. As he passed Rabbit's house, he noticed the door rattling on its hinges, flapping in the gusts. Pooh paused to wonder if Rabbit was at home, but the wind hurried him along as if urging him onward. "If I were the wind," Pooh thought aloud, "I'd find this a very good day for wandering about." The wind seemed to agree, for it gave a particularly strong gust that sent a flurry of leaves spinning around Pooh's feet. Soon, Pooh reached Piglet's house, a small and tidy place nestled beneath a great oak tree. But something was different today. Piglet was outside, running in circles, his scarf trailing behind him like a kite. The wind caught at the scarf, making it flutter and dance, and Piglet chased after it with tiny, determined steps. "Piglet!" Pooh called, his voice barely carrying over the wind's song. "Are you all right?" Piglet stopped, his ears standing straight up, his nose bright pink from the cold. He clutched the scarf to his chest and hurried over to Pooh. "Oh, Pooh!" he cried. "The wind is so strong. I thought my house might blow away, and my scarf nearly did too." Pooh looked at his friend with concern, then at Piglet's little house, which was creaking and groaning as the wind battered its walls. "Don't worry, Piglet," Pooh said, patting Piglet gently on the shoulder. "I'll help you hold your house together. 2 friends are better than 1, especially on a blustery day." Together, they set to work. They tied the windows shut with bits of string and placed heavy stones against the walls, a trick Pooh called wind-proof magic. Piglet wasn't sure if it would work, but with Pooh beside him, he felt braver already. When their work was done, the 2 friends hurried inside, closing the door firmly behind them. Inside, Piglet's house was warm and inviting. A little fire crackled in the hearth, casting a golden glow over the room. Piglet, ever the thoughtful host, made 2 cups of warm honey tea. He handed one to Pooh, who accepted it gratefully and took a careful sip. Outside, the wind continued to howl, rattling the windows and sending shadows dancing across the walls. But inside, the little house felt safe and snug, a small haven of warmth in the middle of the storm. Piglet sat close to Pooh, his cup cradled in his hooves, and let out a contented sigh. "I feel much safer with you here, Pooh," Piglet said softly. "I was a little frightened before, but now I'm not so worried." Pooh smiled, his eyes twinkling. "And I'm glad it's windy today, Piglet, because if it hadn't been, I might have missed a lovely cup of honey tea with my best friend." They sat together, listening to the wind's wild music outside. Every so often, a branch would tap against the window, or a gust would make the house tremble, but neither Pooh nor Piglet minded. They were together, and that made all the difference. As they sipped their tea, they watched the world outside through the window. Leaves spun and danced in the air, swirling in great circles before settling on the ground. The clouds rolled across the sky like giant gray pillows, moving quickly as if they too were eager to see where the wind would take them. In the distance, the trees bent and swayed, their branches waving as if saying hello to the two friends inside. Pooh, feeling thoughtful, set down his cup and spoke. "You know, Piglet, sometimes the wind can seem a little frightening, but maybe it's just the wind's way of reminding us that we're not alone, because on days like this, friends come together." Piglet nodded, his eyes shining. "Yes, Pooh, and I'm very glad you came to visit me." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that only true friends can share. The wind might have been wild and loud outside, but inside Piglet's house, there was only peace, warmth, and the gentle hum of friendship. After a while, Pooh stood up and stretched. "I suppose I should be heading home before the wind gets any stronger," he said. But Piglet shook his head. "Why don't you stay a little longer, Pooh? We can tell stories by the fire and maybe have another cup of honey tea." Pooh considered this. "That sounds like a very good idea, Piglet," he agreed. "Especially the part about the honey." So they settled in by the fire, sharing stories and laughter as the wind sang its song outside. And though the storm raged on in the 100-acre wood, inside the little house under the oak tree, there was nothing but friendship, peace, and a little honey to sweeten the day. On that crisp winter morning, as the sun began to filter through the bare branches of the 100-acre wood, Pooh and Piglet's woozle hunt became something of a grand expedition. The air was tinged with the promise of adventure, and the ground beneath their feet crunched with each careful step. Though neither of them had ever seen a woozle, the very idea of one was enough to set their imaginations spinning. As Pooh and Piglet circled the old tree, their breath puffed out in little clouds, mingling with the mist that hovered over the forest floor. Each time they completed a round, the number of footprints seemed to multiply. Piglet, his scarf trailing behind him like a banner, clung close to Pooh's side, peering anxiously at the mysterious tracks. Pooh, for his part, was deep in thought. He wondered what a woozle might look like. Was it tall or short? Did it like honey, or did it prefer something else entirely? Like thistles, perhaps, or marmalade? Pooh's tummy rumbled at the thought, reminding him that whatever woozles ate, he would rather have honey. Piglet, meanwhile, imagined all sorts of woozles, striped woozles, spotted woozles, woozles with long whiskers, and woozles with curly tails. He hoped, quietly, that if they did meet a woozle, it would be a friendly one. After a while, the pair paused for a moment, standing side by side in the cold morning light. Piglet shivered, not only from the chill, but from the excitement of the hunt. He looked up at Pooh, whose brow was furrowed in serious contemplation. "Pooh," Piglet whispered, "do you think woozles come out in the winter? Or do they stay in their houses where it's warm?" Pooh considered this carefully. "Well, Piglet, I suppose if a woozle likes honey as much as I do, it might come out looking for breakfast, even if it's cold. But perhaps woozles have their own kind of honey, called woozle honey, which they keep in special woozle jars." Piglet nodded, impressed by Pooh's reasoning. "That makes sense, Pooh. I hope if we meet one, it will let us taste a little bit of its honey." They continued their hunt, circling the tree once more, and once more after that, the number of footprints growing with each lap. The forest was quiet except for the sound of their feet and the occasional creak of a branch overhead. Somewhere in the distance, a bird chirped, and the wind rustled through the dry leaves. Piglet's imagination was beginning to run away with him. He pictured a whole family of woozles, tiptoeing through the woods, leaving their footprints behind. Perhaps there was a woozle mother and father, and a little woozle child, all bundled up in scarves just like his own. Suddenly, Piglet stopped and tugged at Pooh's arm. "Pooh," he said, his voice trembling just a little, "what if the woozles are following us instead of us following them?" Pooh stopped too and thought about this. It was a very interesting idea. "Well, Piglet, if they are, I hope they're friendly woozles. But just in case, we should keep our eyes open and our noses alert." Piglet nodded, and together they tiptoed a little more quietly, peeking around the tree trunks and under the bushes as they went. Every so often, Pooh would pause and sniff the air just in case there was a hint of woozle honey on the breeze. As they walked, Pooh began to hum a little tune to keep his spirits up. It went something like this. If you're hunting for a woozle, you must keep your wits about. For a woozle might be hiding, or it might be out and out. But a woozle, if it's friendly, might invite you in for tea. And together you could share some honey, just like Piglet, Woozle, and me. Piglet listened, and soon found himself humming along. The tune seemed to make the woods feel a little less mysterious, and the footprints a little less frightening. After several more rounds, the pair stopped once again to examine the ever-growing collection of tracks. Pooh scratched his head thoughtfully, and Piglet peered closely at the prints, comparing them to his own small feet. "Pooh," Piglet said at last, "do you think woozles wear boots? Because these footprints look a lot like mine." Pooh looked down at his own feet, then at Piglet's, and then at the footprints. He remembered how they had walked around the tree, again and again, always following the same path. "Piglet," Pooh said slowly, "I think we may have been following ourselves all along." Piglet's eyes grew wide, and then he let out a small giggle. "Oh, Pooh, we've been hunting woozles, but we found ourselves." Pooh chuckled, and the sound echoed softly through the trees. "Well, Piglet, sometimes when you go looking for something mysterious, you find something familiar instead, and that can be just as wonderful." Feeling much braver now, Piglet grinned. "I suppose it's better to find yourself with a friend than to find a woozle all alone." Pooh agreed wholeheartedly. "Absolutely, Piglet, and I think after all this hunting, we've earned a little something sweet. What do you say to some honey back at my house?" Piglet's eyes lit up. "Oh, yes, please, Pooh." And so, arm in arm, the two friends made their way out of the woods, leaving their footprints behind them in the frosty ground. The morning sun shone a little brighter, and the air seemed a little warmer as they walked together, laughing about their grand woozle adventure. Though they never did find a woozle that day, Pooh and Piglet discovered something even better: the joy of a shared adventure, and the comfort of knowing that, no matter how twisty the path or how mysterious the footprints, they would always have each other. In the 100-acre wood, that was the very best discovery of all. On a gentle, golden morning in the 100-acre wood, the world felt as soft and sweet as honey. The sun peeked through the tall trees, dappling the grass with warm light, and a light breeze carried with it the scent of wildflowers and the faintest buzz of busy bees. Winnie the Pooh, a bear of very little brain but a very big heart, was enjoying his favorite kind of stroll, unhurried, with no particular destination, and plenty of time to think of honey and hum a tune. As Pooh ambled along, his mind wandered in circles, always returning to honey. He sang quietly to himself, a little song made up on the spot, as simple and comforting as a warm blanket. But as he neared a familiar clearing, his song trailed off. For there, standing perfectly still and gazing at a cloud as if it might hold the answer to all of life's troubles, was Eeyore, the old gray donkey. Eeyore was known for his slow ways and sad eyes, but today, even by Eeyore's standards, he looked especially downcast. Pooh paused, feeling a gentle tug of concern in his chest. He approached softly, not wanting to startle his friend. "Good morning, Eeyore," Pooh said, his voice as kind as a bear could make it. "You look a little sadder than usual today." Eeyore let out a sigh that seemed to come from his hooves all the way up to his ears. "I've lost it, Pooh," he said, his voice heavy with gloom. Pooh's brow furrowed. "Lost what, Eeyore?" "My tail," Eeyore replied, turning around slowly. Pooh peered at Eeyore's backside, where usually a tail, held on with a small nail and adorned with a red bow, would be. But now there was nothing but a lonely spot of gray fur. "Oh, bother," Pooh whispered. "How did you lose your tail, Eeyore?" Eeyore shrugged his shaggy shoulders. "I wish I knew, Pooh. I woke up this morning and it was just gone. Maybe it got tired of being a tail. Maybe it decided to go somewhere more exciting. Who cares anyway?" Pooh's heart ached for his friend. Losing a tail, he thought, must feel a little like losing a jar of honey. Something you hardly notice until it's missing, and then it's all you can think about. Pooh scratched his head, which often helped him think, and said, "Don't worry, Eeyore. I'll go and ask around. Someone must have seen it." After all, tails don't just vanish. I'm a bear of good intentions, you know. Eeyore sighed again, but this time it was a little softer. Nobody cares about a donkey's tail, Pooh, but thank you. Pooh nodded, determined to help his friend. He set off through the woods, his steps a little more purposeful now. The first place he thought to visit was Owl's house, for Owl was known for his wisdom, or at least for his many, many words. Pooh arrived at Owl's door and explained the situation. Owl listened, nodding gravely, and began to speak at great length about the history of tails and the importance of keeping track of one's belongings. Pooh tried very hard to follow, but his mind wandered, as it often did when Owl talked for a long time. As Pooh waited, his gaze drifted to Owl's doorbell, a curious thing, made of a small string with a bright red bow at the end. It looked oddly familiar. Pooh's eyes widened. "Owl," Pooh interrupted politely, "your doorbell looks a lot like Eeyore's tail." Owl blinked in surprise. "Oh, this? I found it lying about the other day. Thought it would make a fine doorbell, so I tied it up here. What's so odd about that?" Pooh's heart leapt with hope. That must be it. Eeyore's tail. He's been looking everywhere for it. Owl, a little embarrassed, quickly untied the tail and handed it to Pooh. "Well, if it is his, I suppose he ought to have it back." Pooh thanked Owl and hurried off, tail in paw, feeling lighter than he had all morning. When Pooh returned to the clearing, Eeyore was still standing in the same spot, his eyes fixed on the sky. Pooh called out, his voice bright with excitement. "Eeyore, I have a surprise for you." Eeyore turned slowly, suspicion in his eyes. "Is it another one of those cheerful things, Pooh?" Pooh grinned and held out the tail. "Guess what I found? It's your tail. Owl had it all along, using it as a doorbell." Eeyore stared at the tail, then at Pooh, then back at the tail. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, quietly, he stepped closer and examined it. "Yes, that's it. And the red bow, I remember the red bow." Just then, Christopher Robin arrived, summoned by Pooh's earlier request for help. With gentle hands, Christopher Robin took the tail and the little nail and carefully pinned it back where it belonged. Eeyore held very still, and when it was done he gave a little shake. The tail swung back and forth, as if it had never been gone. Eeyore looked back at Pooh, his eyes softer than before. "Thank you, Pooh. I suppose you really are a good bear after all." Pooh smiled, a warm and happy feeling blooming in his chest. It wasn't quite the same as eating honey, but it was close. Maybe, he thought, helping a friend is its own kind of sweetness. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the 100-acre wood, Pooh hummed his song again, this time with a new verse, one about finding lost things and the joy of friendship. Eeyore's tail was back where it belonged, and all felt right in the world. In the 100-acre wood, a small worry had been set right, and the day ended with the gentle comfort of knowing that friends look out for each other. And sometimes, that's the very best kind of day there is. In the heart of the 100-acre wood, where every day brings a new adventure and every friend is never far away, the morning dawned bright and fresh. The gentle sun peeked through the leafy canopy, scattering diamonds of light across the dew-laden grass. Birds chirped softly, and the breeze carried a promise of something special in the air. On a mossy log, Christopher Robin sat quietly, his legs swinging and his mind busy with thoughts. He was thinking about his dear friend, Pooh Bear, who had, not long ago, done something quite remarkable. Pooh had found Eeyore's missing tail, a feat that required not only a keen eye, but a kind heart. As Christopher Robin pondered, a smile spread across his face. He whispered to himself, "Pooh deserves something wonderful, something to show him just how much he means to us all." And in that very moment, the idea of a party, an honest-to-goodness celebration, sparkled in his mind like sunlight on water. "A party for Pooh!" he declared, his eyes shining with excitement. No sooner had the idea taken root than Christopher Robin set about making it real. He gathered paper, a stubby pencil, and wrote out invitations in his best, albeit slightly wobbly handwriting. Each invitation read, "You are cordially invited to a party in the wood, in honor of Pooh the Big Bear. There will be honey, cookies, and cake, maybe. Meet at dusk, under the big tree near Pooh's house." With a sense of purpose, Christopher Robin delivered the invitations to all his friends. Piglet, who always appreciated a good party and a good friend, was delighted. Rabbit, ever practical, wondered about the menu and whether there would be enough napkins. Owl, with a flourish, promised to prepare an appropriate speech, while Kanga and Little Roo clapped their paws in anticipation. Even Eeyore, who rarely expected much, found himself quietly pleased at the prospect of cake. And though Tigger wasn't around that day, one could imagine him bouncing with excitement at the very thought. When Pooh received his invitation, he blinked in surprise. "A party? For me?" he murmured, feeling a warm glow in his chest. Of course, his next thought was, "Will there be honey?" And as he imagined jars and jars of golden sweetness, his tummy gave a hopeful rumble. As the day wore on, preparations filled the wood with a gentle bustle. Piglet, with trembling but determined hands, helped hang paper streamers from the branches, their colors fluttering in the breeze. Rabbit arrived with a basket of crispy roasted carrots, arranged just so. Kanga and Roo squeezed apples into juice, the scent crisp and inviting. Owl, meanwhile, practiced his speech, long and filled with wise-sounding words, as was his way. Eeyore, ever the skeptic, ambled over and surveyed the scene. "A party for a bear with a round belly," he mused. "Well, as long as there's cake, I suppose it's worth attending." As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink, the friends gathered beneath the great tree near Pooh's house. A table, fashioned from sturdy tree trunks and covered with a bright cloth, stood at the center of the clearing. Plates of cookies, bowls of berries, and, most importantly, pots of honey gleamed in the fading light. At last, Pooh was led into the circle of friends. He looked around, eyes wide with wonder, as everyone clapped, hands, paws, wings, and even hooves. Christopher Robin stood up holding a glass of apple juice, his face beaming with pride. "We are gathered today to celebrate a very special bear," he began, his voice clear and kind. "Pooh helped Eeyore find his tail, not because he had to, but because he is a true friend, and so we are having a party because Pooh is the best bear anyone could hope to know." "Indeed." A chorus of cheers rang out. "For Pooh! For Pooh! 3 cheers! Hooray! Hooray! Hooray!" The woods echoed with laughter and joy. Pooh, bashful and a little overwhelmed, shuffled his feet. I was just doing what a good bear should do," he said. But his eyes sparkled with happiness, and his heart felt lighter than air. Then Christopher Robin stepped forward, holding a small box wrapped in green leaves and tied with a bit of twine. He placed it gently in Pooh's paws. "This is for you, Pooh. From all of us." With careful paws, Pooh untied the string and opened the box. Inside was a honey pot, gleaming gold in the twilight, with a note written in Christopher Robin's careful hand. "To Pooh, the great bear, from all his friends." Pooh hugged the honey pot close, feeling a warmth that honey alone could never give. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice soft and full of wonder. The party continued with stories and laughter. Owl delivered his speech, which was indeed long but full of wisdom and affection. Rabbit organized a carrot-tasting contest, which he won, to no one's surprise. Kanga and Roo danced together, and Piglet shyly joined in. Eeyore, with a small smile, ate his fill of cake and even managed a chuckle or two. As the moon rose high, casting a silver glow over the clearing, the friends began to say their goodbyes. One by one they drifted home, their hearts full of warmth and memories. Pooh lingered by the embers of the campfire, the honey pot still cradled in his arms. Christopher Robin stood beside him, gazing up at the stars. "You know, Christopher Robin," Pooh said softly, "I feel so happy." Christopher Robin smiled, gently ruffling the bear's fur. "Me too, Pooh. You deserve every bit of it." And so, under the starry sky, with the gentle sounds of the night all around, a bear with a round belly and an even rounder heart made his way home, his steps light, his spirit lifted, and his honey pot full. In the 100 Acre Wood, where kindness is always celebrated, the memory of Pooh's party lingered long after, a gentle reminder that friendship is the sweetest gift of all. In the heart of the 100-acre wood, mornings are always gentle, but today felt extra special. The sun sparkled on every blade of grass, and the air was as sweet as honey. All around, the trees rustled with the softest whispers, as if they too sensed that something wonderful was about to happen. Christopher Robin, with his thoughtful eyes and that familiar, gentle smile, sat quietly on a fallen log. He watched the sunlight flicker through the leaves and thought about his dearest friend, Winnie the Pooh. Pooh, with his golden fur and ever-present rumble of hunger, had done something truly remarkable. He had helped Eeyore, the gloomy but lovable donkey, find his missing tail. It was a small act of kindness, but in the 100-acre wood, small things often mean the most. Christopher Robin's mind wandered. How can I thank Pooh? He wondered aloud, his voice barely louder than the breeze. What could be better than a party? A party just for Pooh. The idea grew brighter and brighter in his heart until he could hardly keep it inside. Without wasting another moment, Christopher Robin set to work. He wrote invitations in his best, though rather wobbly, handwriting. The ink smudged here and there, and the lines slanted across the page, but the warmth of the words shone through. You are cordially invited to a party in the wood, in honor of Pooh the Big Bear. There will be honey, cookies, and cake, maybe. Meet at dusk, under the big tree near Pooh's house. He sent the invitations fluttering across the forest, to Piglet, the small and timid friend with the biggest heart, to Rabbit, who liked things neat and orderly, to Owl, wise and always ready to give a speech, to Kanga and Little Roo, who brought comfort and cheer, to Eeyore, who always needed a reason to smile, and of course, to Pooh himself. When Pooh received his invitation, he blinked in surprise. A party? For me? He murmured, feeling a bubble of happiness rise inside him. And then, as Pooh always did, he wondered about the honey. Is there any honey? He mumbled, already imagining golden jars stacked high, each one sweeter than the last. Preparations for the party began at once. Piglet, though nervous, was determined to help. He tiptoed about, hanging paper streamers from the lowest branches, his tiny paws trembling with excitement. Rabbit arrived with a tray of crispy roasted carrots, prepared with great care and a great deal of fussing. Owl, in his grandest voice, rehearsed a speech that seemed to grow longer and more elaborate with every telling. Kanga and Roo squeezed apples for juice, filling the air with a crisp, sweet scent. Eeyore arrived last, his tail now firmly attached. He looked around, puzzled but pleased. Why throw a party for a bear with a round belly? He wondered aloud. But, well, as long as there's cake, I suppose it's all right. As the sun dipped lower, its golden light spilled through the leaves, painting the clearing in warm, drowsy colors. A picnic table, made of tree trunks and covered with a patchwork cloth, stood ready beneath the big tree near Pooh's house. One by one, the friends gathered, each bringing laughter and anticipation. At last, Pooh was led into the clearing. He looked around, eyes wide with wonder. All his friends stood in a circle, clapping their hands, paws, or wings. Christopher Robin stood, holding a glass of apple juice, his face shining with pride. We are gathered today to celebrate a very special bear, he began. Pooh helped Eeyore find his tail, something no one expected, but Pooh did it out of pure kindness. And so, we are having a party, because Pooh is the best bear. The friends erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the trees. For Pooh! 3 times! Hooray! 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 Even Eeyore managed a small, lopsided smile. Pooh's cheeks turned as rosy as the apples in Kanga's basket. He shuffled his feet and stammered, I was just doing what a good bear should do. But inside, his heart felt as big and warm as the sun. Then, Christopher Robin stepped forward with a small box, wrapped in leaves and tied with a bit of string. He placed it gently in Pooh's paws. Pooh untied the knot, his paws trembling with excitement. Inside was a golden honey pot, gleaming in the fading light. On it, written in careful ink, were the words, "To Pooh, the great bear, from all his friends." For a moment Pooh was too touched to speak. He hugged the honey pot to his chest, feeling the love of his friends in every brush of the leaves, every glimmer of gold. Then came the feast. There was honey, plenty of honey, along with cookies, cake, and roasted carrots. Kanga poured apple juice for everyone, and Roo bounced with excitement, telling jokes that made Piglet giggle. Owl delivered his speech, which was very long and very wise, though no one quite remembered what it was about. Eeyore sat quietly, savoring his slice of cake, and even Rabbit relaxed enough to smile. They told stories, laughed, and sometimes just sat together, enjoying the simple joy of being friends. Pooh, of course, had to pat his round belly more than once, for it was very, very full. As the moon climbed high and the wind began to sing through the trees, the party slowly came to an end. One by one, the friends said their goodbyes, each carrying a heart full of happy memories. Pooh lingered by the glowing embers of the campfire, his honey pot tucked safely under his arm. Christopher Robin stood beside him, gazing up at the stars. "You know, Christopher Robin," Pooh said softly, "I feel so happy." Christopher Robin smiled and gently stroked Pooh's head. "Me too, Pooh. You deserve it." And so, under the twinkling stars and the soft hush of the woods, a bear with a round belly and an even rounder heart walked home, his steps light, his heart full, and his honey pot gleaming in the moonlight. In the 100-Acre Wood, where kindness is always celebrated, the best parties are the ones shared with friends. As the golden sunlight filtered through the leafy canopy of the 100-Acre Wood, a gentle hush settled over its familiar paths and burrows. All was as it should be, with the birds singing softly and the breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers and honey. But on this particular morning, something new and rather extraordinary was happening. For at the edge of the wood, near a patch of raspberry bushes, two unfamiliar figures had arrived. The first was Kanga, tall and graceful, her fur the soft color of toasted bread, her eyes kind but watchful. She moved with a gentle authority, never rushing, always attentive, as if she carried with her a quiet wisdom from far beyond the forest's borders. Close by her side, bouncing with every step, was Roo. Roo was small, full of boundless curiosity and energy, his nose twitching at every new scent, his eyes wide with wonder at the world around him. Kanga and Roo had chosen a cozy little cave as their new home, a place warm and snug, lined with soft moss and sheltered from the wind. They went about their settling in with quiet purpose, arranging their things and making everything just so. They didn't make much noise, nor did they disturb the peace of the wood. But even so, their presence did not go unnoticed. The news of the newcomers traveled swiftly, carried by the rustle of leaves and the chatter of the birds. It reached the ears of Rabbit, who always prided himself on knowing everything that happened in the forest. Rabbit, being Rabbit, wasted no time in sharing the news with his friends. And soon, it reached Piglet. Piglet, small and timid, with a heart as delicate as a butterfly's wing, listened with growing apprehension as Rabbit recounted what he had heard. Rabbit's stories, as usual, were told with great enthusiasm and just a touch of exaggeration. "She has a pouch, Piglet!" Rabbit exclaimed, his ears twitching with excitement. "A real pouch, right on her tummy! And they say if she wants to, she can put someone inside and hop away with them, just like that!" Piglet's eyes grew round as saucers. "You mean she could put me in there?" "Exactly!" Rabbit nodded, quite pleased with himself. "You're just the right size, Piglet. Just a little lift and off you'd go." Piglet shivered from his ears to his toes. The thought of being scooped up and carried away in a stranger's pouch was almost too much to bear. He imagined himself vanishing without a trace, lost in the deep folds of Kanga's soft belly pouch. Kanga, in Piglet's mind, became the most mysterious and perhaps the most frightening creature in the 100-Acre Wood. Rabbit, ever the organizer, decided that something must be done. "We need to show Kanga that this forest belongs to us," he announced, his voice filled with determination. "And the best way to do that is to capture Roo," Piglet gasped. "Capture Roo?" "Yes," Rabbit said, as if it were the most sensible thing in the world. "We'll take Roo away for a little while. Meanwhile, we'll put someone else in Kanga's pouch instead. It'll surprise her. She'll learn that you can't just come into the 100-acre wood and do as you please. Pooh, who had been listening with one ear while thinking about honey, agreed to come along, mainly because he'd heard there would be afternoon tea afterwards. The next day, Rabbit, Pooh, and Piglet put their plan into action. They invited Kanga and Roo to the play area near the lake, where the water sparkled and the grass was soft underfoot. While Roo hopped and danced, exploring every pebble and leaf, Rabbit whispered, "Now's the time." With a gentle but swift motion, Rabbit scooped up Roo and hurried away, while Piglet, trembling all over, slipped into Kanga's pouch. The pouch was soft and warm, and it smelled faintly of herbs and sunshine. But Piglet was far too frightened to enjoy it. He curled up tight, wishing with all his might that he were somewhere else. Kanga, however, was not fooled. She was a mother, after all, and no one knows her baby better than a mother. She felt at once that the little creature in her pouch was not Roo. Roo was always wriggling and asking questions, always chattering about everything he saw. This little one was quiet, trembling, and very much afraid. But instead of scolding or becoming angry, Kanga decided to play along. She hopped gently home, pretending nothing was amiss. Once there, she said in her calm, soothing voice, "Dear Roo, today we are going to have a bath." Piglet's heart nearly stopped. "A bath?" he squeaked, his voice muffled. "Yes, a lovely warm bath," Kanga replied, her eyes twinkling, "and we'll scrub behind your ears and make you all clean." Piglet, already overwhelmed, could not bear the thought of being bathed. As Kanga prepared the water, Piglet finally burst out, "I am Piglet! I am not Roo! Please don't bathe me any more!" Kanga laughed softly, her voice gentle and kind. She lifted Piglet from her pouch and wrapped him in a warm towel. "I know, little one," she said. "But now you're all clean and there's nothing to be afraid of." Just then, Rabbit and Pooh arrived, looking a bit sheepish. Roo was with them, chattering excitedly about his adventure with Rabbit. Kanga invited everyone in for afternoon tea, and soon they were all gathered around a table, sharing stories and laughing together. Piglet, nibbling on a biscuit and feeling safe and warm, looked up at Kanga and smiled. "I used to be so scared of Kanga," he admitted, "but now I see she's like a walking quilt." And so, in the gentle light of the afternoon, old friends and new friends sat together, discovering that sometimes the things that seem the scariest are really just waiting to be understood. In the 100-acre wood, with kindness and a little courage, even the biggest worries can be soothed, and everyone, no matter how small, can find a place to belong. In the gentle light of early morning, when the 100-acre wood was still damp with dew and the sleepy sun peeked through the leaves, Christopher Robin had an idea that sparkled with promise. It was the sort of idea that made even the most ordinary day feel like the beginning of a story. With his friends gathered around him, Pooh, Piglet, Rabbit, Eeyore, Owl, Kanga, and little Roo, Christopher Robin stood tall and declared, "Today we're going on an expedition." At the sound of that mysterious word, his friends' eyes grew wide with excitement and curiosity. Piglet, ever so small and timid, looked up and whispered, "Christopher Robin, what does expedition mean?" Christopher Robin smiled, a twinkle in his eye, and replied, "It means going to a place you've never been before to find something you don't know what it is." The group gasped in admiration, their imaginations already soaring. Owl, who prided himself on being the wisest among them, nodded sagely. "Ah, yes, a real adventure," he said, as if he had been on many such journeys himself. Pooh, always practical and always thinking of his next meal, asked hopefully, "Is there honey on the way?" Christopher Robin laughed, the sound as bright as the morning, and said, "There might be. Who knows? We might find a wild beehive." That was all Pooh needed to hear, and so the expedition began. Pooh, feeling especially important, led the way. He considered himself an experienced bear on the go, which seemed as good a reason as any to walk in front. Christopher Robin followed close behind, then Piglet, who kept glancing nervously at the shadows. Rabbit hopped along, already making plans for the best paths to take. Kanga walked gently, holding little Roo by the paw, while Owl soared above, keeping a watchful eye on the group. Eeyore brought up the rear, moving slowly and thoughtfully, as if he was pondering the meaning of expeditions in general. Pooh hummed a little song about Bear and the unknown, his steps light with anticipation. Piglet, meanwhile, whispered to Christopher Robin, "What if there's something big and mysterious out there, like the North Pole monster?" Christopher Robin squeezed Piglet's paw reassuringly. "Don't worry, Piglet. I don't think it's dangerous, if it's real at all." That was enough for Piglet, who trusted Christopher Robin more than anyone else in the world. As they walked, Pooh's curiosity got the better of him. "What are we looking for?" he asked, pausing to sniff the air. Christopher Robin thought for a moment, then said, "The North Pole." Pooh blinked. "Oh, I've never met anyone called the North Pole." Owl, eager to share his knowledge, corrected him. "Not a person, Pooh. The North Pole is a place. A very important place, I might add." Pooh considered this. "Oh, then it must be a very cold place, because pole sounds like very cold." The others nodded, none quite sure, but all agreeing that the North Pole did indeed sound rather chilly. Their journey took them through brambly bushes, across a sparkling stream, and over a mound of slippery earth that nearly sent Piglet tumbling, if not for Pooh's quick paws. Each step felt like a step into the unknown, and every rustle in the leaves was a possible clue to the North Pole's location. Then, as the sun climbed higher, casting golden patterns on the forest floor, Pooh stopped. He peered down at the ground, where a long, straight stick was poking out of a small puddle. "Christopher Robin," Pooh called. "I think I've found it." Christopher Robin hurried over, excitement bubbling in his chest. "What is it, Pooh?" Pooh pointed with his paw. "This is definitely the North Pole. It looks like something special, and it's a long way from where we started." Christopher Robin beamed. "We found the North Pole. Pooh has found it." With great ceremony, Christopher Robin tied a red ribbon around the stick and wrote on a piece of paper, "North Pole, found by Pooh Bear. Discovered by Pooh Bear on a great expedition." Owl nodded solemnly, declaring it an important discovery for the history of the forest. Eeyore, never one to miss a chance for a wry comment, mumbled, "This place must be as cold as its name." Roo bounced up and down, already eager for the next adventure. "Can we explore again, Christopher Robin?" To celebrate their discovery, Christopher Robin spread a blanket beneath a shady tree and opened the basket Kanga had packed. There were sandwiches, biscuits, and, most importantly for Pooh, a pot of golden honey. Pooh's eyes lit up and he declared, "Exploring is about making your stomach hungry very quickly." Piglet, now feeling braver, cuddled up next to Pooh, the worries of the expedition forgotten. As they ate, the friends talked and laughed, sharing their favorite moments from the journey. The sun dipped lower, casting a gentle glow over the little group. In that peaceful moment, with full bellies and happy hearts, it didn't matter that their North Pole was just a stick in a puddle. What mattered was the adventure they'd shared, the fears they'd faced together, and the joy of discovering something new, even if it was only a few steps from home. And so, the North Pole was found. No map was needed, nor any compass. All it took was a curious heart, a sense of wonder, and friends willing to walk beside you, through every bush, across every stream, and past every little fear. In the 100 Acre Wood, that was all the magic anyone ever needed. One morning in the 100 Acre Wood, the world woke to a sky heavy with gray clouds, the kind that seemed to roll in like great soft quilts. The gentle, familiar light was gone, replaced by a silver gloom. It started with a whisper of rain, soft as a sigh, pattering on leaves and puddling in the hollows of tree roots. But as the hours passed, the rain grew bold, drumming on rooftops, splashing against windows and soaking the earth until it could drink no more. The rain did not stop that day, nor the next, nor the day after that. It seemed as though the sky had forgotten how to close itself, and the 100 Acre Wood was soon transformed. Streams overflowed, paths disappeared beneath swirling water, and the familiar world became a great, rippling lake. In a small house tucked beneath the roots of a sturdy tree, Piglet watched the water rise. At first he tried to be brave. He made careful notes in his little diary, the way someone might if they were on an adventure and not simply stuck. Tuesday. Rain. Wednesday. Still raining. Thursday. Too much water. Friday. Looks like I'm going to become a manatee. He tried to smile at his own joke, but it was a nervous, wobbly sort of smile. Outside, the water lapped at the bottom step. Then it covered the step. Then it crept up to the windowsill, swirling with bits of leaf and twig. Piglet pressed his nose to the glass and peered out, hoping for a friendly face. But the world was empty except for the endless falling rain. Inside, it was quiet except for the steady drip, drip, drip from the ceiling and the soft, anxious thumping of Piglet's heart. He tried to remember what it felt like to be brave, but it was hard when you were small and the world was so big and wet. If the water keeps rising, thought Piglet, I might have to swim, but I'm not a duck. Not far away, in another cozy house, Pooh Bear was also stranded. But Pooh, being Pooh, had prepared in his own way. He sat on his bed, surrounded by 11 jars of honey, stacked like golden treasures. The water had crept up to his door, and the floor was cool and damp under his paws, but Pooh was not terribly worried. I don't know how long it'll rain, he said aloud, but I do know I've got 7 more jars of honey. He paused, realizing he had already eaten 4, but that was all right. Honey, after all, was very comforting in times of uncertainty. After another thoughtful spoonful, Pooh's mind wandered to Piglet. He remembered how small Piglet was, how easily frightened, and how he didn't even like honey to cheer him up. I wonder if he's all right. He's so small, and so flooded. He can't comfort himself with honey. Pooh looked around his room. The water was getting higher, sloshing around the legs of his bed. He thought, and then he thought some more, which for Pooh was very hard work. Suddenly his eyes landed on something in the corner. Christopher Robin's old umbrella, large and sturdy, with a handle shaped like a question mark. Pooh dragged the umbrella to the water's edge and set it down, half expecting it to sink. But to his delight, it floated, bobbing gently like a little boat. Pooh's eyes lit up. Great! He exclaimed. This will be the SS Pooh Bear, the first rescue ship. He grabbed a large wooden spoon for a paddle, climbed into the umbrella, and with a deep breath, pushed off into the flood. Piglet, where are you? He called, his voice echoing across the watery wood. Meanwhile, Piglet was watching the water rise inch by inch. He felt a tiny shiver of hope. Maybe, just maybe, someone would come. But the rain was so loud, and the world was so wide. Piglet decided he couldn't just wait. He would send a message. He scribbled a note on a scrap of paper with his smallest pencil. Help! I'm Piglet. I'm trapped in the house and the water's too high. Emergency! Little Piglet. Help! Sincerely, Piglet, who's probably getting wet up to his ears. He rolled the note tight, tucked it into a small glass bottle, and with trembling hooves, pushed the bottle out the window. He watched it bob and spin, caught by the current, and disappear into the rain. The bottle drifted along, weaving between tree trunks, swirling past floating branches, and finally, miraculously, it tapped against the side of Pooh's umbrella. Pooh scooped it up, unscrewed the cap, and read the tiny, soggy letter. His eyes widened. Piglet needs me. This is when I do something very brave, Pooh declared, and he paddled with all his strength, the umbrella rocking and spinning as he hurried toward Piglet's house. At last, he saw it. Piglet's home, nearly swallowed by the flood, only the tip of the roof and the top window showing above the water. Piglet! I'm here! Pooh called, his voice hopeful and strong. Piglet pressed his face to the window. Through the rain and mist, he saw the round, familiar figure of his friend floating in a great black umbrella. His eyes filled with tears, perhaps from relief, perhaps from joy, or perhaps just from all the rain. Pooh, is it really you? Piglet cried. Pooh steered the umbrella as close as he could, pressing it against the window. With a brave little leap, Piglet jumped from the sill into the umbrella, landing in a soggy heap beside his friend. Together they floated through the flooded forest, the umbrella bobbing gently on the waves. Piglet leaned against Pooh, shivering but safe, and whispered, "You're the bravest bear I know, Pooh." Pooh smiled, a little bashful, though it was hard to see through all the rain. "I just did what any bear would do for his best friend," he said quietly. The umbrella carried them to Christopher Robin's house, where the friends of the 100 Acre Wood had gathered, safe and dry. When Piglet arrived, everyone cheered. Pooh was declared the water hero, and Piglet, though wet and shivering, felt warmer than ever before. The rain finally stopped, and the floodwaters slowly slipped away, leaving behind puddles and mud, and the memory of a great adventure. Piglet learned that even though he was small, he was never alone. And Pooh learned that sometimes an umbrella and a kind heart can be the greatest lifeboat of all. In the gentle hush of late summer, when the leaves in the 100 Acre Wood began to whisper of change and the sunlight grew golden and soft, Christopher Robin sat quietly on a weathered tree stump. The air was filled with the scent of grass and the distant hum of bees, and the world seemed to pause for a moment, as if holding its breath. Beside him, Pooh Bear finished the last sweet spoonful of honey from his favorite jar, licking the golden traces from his paw with thoughtful care. "Are you sad?" Pooh asked, his voice as soft as the afternoon breeze. Christopher Robin looked at his friend and nodded, a small, wistful smile curving his lips. "I'm going to have to go away for a while," he said, the words hanging in the air like the last note of a lullaby. The news, as news does in the 100 Acre Wood, traveled on the wind and in the rustle of leaves. A sparrow carried it to Owl, who, with great solemnity, relayed it to Rabbit. Rabbit, in turn, told Kanga as they met along the path, and Kanga whispered it gently to Roo, holding him a little tighter than usual. By the time the news reached Eeyore, he simply nodded, his eyes wise and a little sad. "All good things must come to an end, I know it," he said, as if he had always known this day would come. That evening, Christopher Robin took out his best notepaper and his favorite purple ink. He wrote careful letters to each of his friends, inviting them to a tree stump party by the Talking Brook on Saturday afternoon. "There will be cake," the letters promised, "and things to say." Each letter was folded neatly and delivered with care, and as Pooh read his invitation over and over, he felt a curious ache in his chest. He did not know exactly what goodbye meant, but he understood enough to know it was something that made the world feel a little less bright. Saturday arrived, dressed in its best weather, with sunlight as warm as honey cake and a sky as pale as a favorite nightgown. In the little grassland by the brook, a long table had been set, covered in a striped cloth and laden with all the best things. Bee-shaped cookies, a vanilla cake with thick, creamy icing, bowls of fragrant honey, glasses of strawberry juice, and a basket of crisp carrots brought by Rabbit. The air was filled with laughter and the gentle gurgle of the brook, and for a moment it seemed as if nothing could ever change. One by one everyone arrived, each in their own special way. Owl wore his scholar's cap, looking particularly wise and dignified. Piglet came wrapped in his red scarf, the letter P embroidered proudly on one end. Kanga wore her cleanest apron, and Roo bounced beside her, eyes wide with excitement and a little uncertainty. Eeyore arrived with a single wildflower pinned carefully to his tail, a gift from Pooh, and Pooh himself brought his most precious honey pot, cradling it in his arms as if it were a treasure. When everyone was seated and the last crumbs of cake had been eaten, Christopher Robin stood up. His voice was gentle, but it carried across the table, weaving through the branches and into the hearts of his friends. "My friends," he began, "I am going to another place to study. It's a place without woods, without big trees to climb, and without soft grass to lie on while I watch the clouds drift by." He paused, looking at each of them in turn. Piglet clutched his scarf a little tighter, Roo nestled into Kanga's arms, and Eeyore sighed, his ears drooping just a little more. "But I will never forget you," Christopher Robin continued, placing his hand over his heart. "The adventures we've shared, the lazy afternoons by the stream, the laughter and the falls and the times we helped each other up. They're all here, in my heart, no matter where I go. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Pooh stood up, his honey pot forgotten for once. He walked slowly to Christopher Robin and looked up at him with eyes full of questions and hope. "If you were to go far away," Pooh asked quietly, "and you couldn't take me with you, would you miss me?" Christopher Robin knelt down and wrapped his arms around Pooh, holding him close. "Pooh Bear, I'll miss you every single day. And if you ever miss me, just look up at the sky. No matter where I am, we're still looking at the same moon." Pooh said nothing, but he hugged Christopher Robin back for a long, long time. Some goodbyes, after all, are too big for words. As the sun dipped lower and the shadows grew longer, the party slowly came to an end. Owl spread his wings and flew off into the dusk. Piglet walked home with careful steps, and Kanga carried a sleepy Roo in her arms. Eeyore wandered off toward his thistly corner, his flower still bright against his gray fur. Only Pooh and Christopher Robin remained, sitting side by side on the old tree stump, watching the brook as it caught the first glimmers of starlight. The forest was quiet, save for the gentle murmur of the wind and the distant call of a night bird. After a while, Christopher Robin spoke again, his voice soft and full of wonder. "Pooh, if someday I am no longer the little boy I am now—" Pooh turned to listen, his head tilted in that thoughtful way of his. Christopher Robin smiled, a smile that held all the summers of childhood. "Remember, a part of me will always be the little boy beside you, in this forest. No matter how far I go or how much I change, I'll always be here with you." The stars brightened overhead, and the world seemed to hold its breath once more. Christopher Robin stood, gave Pooh one last, gentle hug, and walked away into the gathering dusk. But the magic of the 100-acre wood lingered. The friendship, the memories, the laughter, and the adventures, these things remained, woven into the very air and the rustling leaves. And Pooh, the little bear with the big heart, sat beneath his favorite tree each afternoon, listening to the wind as it carried the stories of days gone by, and waiting for the next adventure, certain that love and friendship never truly say goodbye.